Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading way back, late Jurassic period.
Yep, deep time. We're looking at a dinosaur called Atlantosaurus.
Exactly. And we've got some historical documents here, some sources that tell a really interesting story. It's more than just big bones.
Oh, definitely. It's right into the drama of early paleontology.
So our mission really is to get a handle on what we actually know about this huge sauropod, Atlantosaurus. And maybe more importantly, why its history is so, well, tangled.
Tangled is a good word. It lived, what, around 150 million years ago? Late Jurassic?
And what makes it particularly interesting, our sources say, is that it was the first sauropod found during the Bone Wars.
Ah, yes, the Bone Wars, that infamous rivalry. And yeah, Atlantosaurus pops up right at the start of that.
Which, let's be honest, wasn't always great for the science itself, was it? More about scooping the other guy.
Pretty much, academic acclaim sometimes took priority over, let's say, meticulous methods. It definitely shaped how Atlantosaurus was found and, understood initially.
Okay, so let's dig into the naming. How did Atlantosaurus get its name? Our sources say Othniel Charles Marsh first called it Titanosaurus montanus, July 1877.
That's right, Titanosaurus. Sounds massive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fitting for a giant sauropod.
It really does. So why change it? Why Atlantosaurus?
Well, this is where scientific naming rules come in. Turns out the name Titanosaurus was already taken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Richard Lydecker had named a different sauropod, one found in India, Titanosaurus, just a bit earlier that same year.
Wow, talk about bad timing.
Exactly. So to avoid confusion, which is, super important in science, Marsh had to rename his discovery.
And he landed on Atlantosaurus montanus, Atlas lizard. That's still pretty epic.
It is. It definitely evokes that image of the Titan Atlas holding up the world. Suggests something enormous, foundational even.
Where did they actually find the first bones, the type specimen?
Arthur Lakes found it. He was a collector working for Marsh. It came from Lakes Quarry number 1 in Colorado, part of the Morrison Formation.
And the specimen itself has a number, right? YPM.
YPM 1835. That's its catalog number at the Yale Peabody Museum.
So what did they actually find? What was that first description based on? It wasn't a whole skeleton, I gather.
No, not at all. It was pretty limited, actually. Just 2 or 3 sacral vertebrae from the very back of the hip region.
The sacrals. Those are the ones fused together in the hip.
That's right. And they were still connected to the hip bones, the ilia. Marsh noted 2 main things.
Okay. What stood out to him?
One was just the sheer size. They were immense. And the other was the presence of pleurocoels.
Pluricles. Those are the air pockets inside the bone, right?
Exactly. Air-filled cavities within the vertebrae. Back then, Marsh thought these might be really important, maybe distinguishing features.
Interesting. Did they know why they had them? Weight saving, maybe?
That was the idea, yeah. Probably helped lighten these massive skeletons. But here's the thing.
Uh-oh.
As we learned more about sauropods over the years, we found out that these pluricols are actually, well, everywhere. Lots of different sauropods have them.
Ah. So they weren't so special to Atlantosaurus after all.
Not nearly as unique as initially thought, which means those original vertebrae, it's hard to tell them apart just based on that feature from, say, an Apatosaurus vertebra.
Okay, so if the main features aren't unique, what does that mean for Atlantosaurus montanus today, taxonomically speaking?
It means it's complicated, because those original bones, the holotype YPM 1835, lack clear, unique diagnostic features. It's now considered a nomen dubium.
A dubious name.
Precisely. We just can't be sure, based only on those initial fragments, that it represents a distinct species separate from its relatives.
So the big takeaway isn't just about a name mix-up. It's about how little evidence can leave things uncertain.
Absolutely. It shows how our picture of the past evolves. What seems like a landmark find can become ambiguous as we learn more.
And didn't you mention, some researchers even think A. montanus could just be Apatosaurus ajax. That's a name people know.
That's right. The suggestion has been made. Given the lack of distinct features in the Amontanus material and its similarity to Apatosaurus bones found in the same formation, it's a real possibility. It highlights the challenge of working with fragments.
Okay, but there was another species mentioned in our sources, Atlantosaurus immanis, named in 1878.
Yes, immanis, meaning the immense one. Marsh named this one just a year later.
And this one was based on more material.
Oh yes, much more. The holotype for immanis, YPM 1840, was a nearly complete postcranial skeleton. So most of the body behind the head.
Also found by Arthur Lakes.
Yep, same discoverer, but a different spot, Quarry number 10, also in the Morrison Formation.
And with this more complete skeleton, Marsh made some pretty big-size claims, didn't he? I saw 35 meters mentioned.
He did initially. An absolutely colossal estimate, around 35 meters or over 110 feet long. He based that largely on his first measurement of the femur, the thigh bone. He thought it was about 2.5 meters long.
2.5 meters.
Yeah, which would have easily made it one of the largest land animals known back then. But
But
later measurements show the femur was actually closer to 1.95 meters. Still enormous, but, significantly less than 2.5.
right, our notes even have that picture of the cast. Natural History Museum in London says 6 feet, 2 inches. That's about 1.95 meters. Still massive.
Definitely still massive.
Yeah.
But that initial inflated estimate really fueled the imagination. Early drawings and reconstructions of Aemanis portrayed it as the largest land animal ever. It became quite famous for a while.
It's easy to see how that happens, especially back then. So just to circle back on the naming Titanosaurus montanus, that was the original name for the first find, but it was preoccupied.
Correct. Titanosaurus montanus Marsh, 1877, is the original name, but invalid because Titanosaurus Lydecker, 1877, had priority. So T. montanus is now just a synonym of Atlantosaurus montanus, not a valid name itself.
Got it. So moving forward in time a bit, where does Atlantosaurus fit in the grand scheme?
In the sauropod family tree, there was a 2015 study mentioned. Right, phylogenetic analyses try to figure out these relationships. That 2015 study looked at Apatosaurina. That's the group, including Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus.
And where did Atlantosaurus land?
Well, the analysis included Atlantosaurus and placed it within Apatosaurinae, actually as separate from both Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus. But, and this is important, that study didn't specifically try to resolve the connection between Aemonius, the more complete one, and A. montanus, the dubious one.
So even recent studies haven't fully cleared up the mess, especially around that original species.
Exactly. The nomen dubium status of A. montanus stems directly from how limited and, frankly, non-distinctive those first bones are. We just don't have enough information from YPM 1835 to confidently say, yes, this is different, or no, this is the same as that.
And Aemonus, the immense one.
Aemonodus is based on better material, clearly an Apatosaurine, but its precise relationship to A. montanus and whether it deserves its own species name linked to Atlantosaurus. That's still debated because the type species itself is dubious. It gets complicated fast.
It really does. And our sources sort of place this whole story within the bigger timeline of discovering sauropods, like a historical marker.
It really is. Atlantosaurus, dubious or not, represents a very early chapter. It shows how science starts, sometimes with confusion and competition, before reaching clearer understanding. It's part of the journey of sauropod paleontology.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Our deep dive into Atlantosaurus. Well, it shows us an early, important piece of sauropod history.
Definitely important historically, but also heavily influenced by that whole Bone Wars atmosphere. The rush, the rivalry.
And despite the initial hype, the massive size estimates, especially for A. amanus, the original species, A. montanus, is stuck with this dubious label.
Because those first bones are just too fragmentary, too generic maybe. So we're left questioning if it was really distinct from something like Apatosaurus.
It's a fantastic example of how science works, isn't it? Constant revision based on evidence.
It really is. Atlantosaurus reminds us that understanding the past is an ongoing process. New finds, new analyses, and constantly refine the picture.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, listening. Think about how our view of the past, even something like identifying the biggest dinosaur, can be shaped and then reshaped.
Yeah, reshaped by how things were discovered, the personalities involved, and just the slow accumulation of better evidence.
So if a creature once thought to be maybe the largest land animal ever is now considered a nomen dubium, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other things we think are settled science today might shift as we keep digging and keep analyzing?
That's the exciting part. The story of life is always being revised. There's always more to discover.